cannot tell you how many times I've been talking to someone and said, oh yeah, I'm a thespian, only to receive a sort of shocked expression and a question of, you're a what? And I've had to over and over again assure them that no, I am not a lesbian, although I'm not sure why you'd be so shocked even if I were. But what is a thespian, and why did so few people know what it is? How can we learn about what this word means? So in order to learn about the term thespian, we need to go back, like way back, all the way to ancient Greece, back when theater first began. So theater in ancient Greece started out as essentially a religious event. It would happen during these great festivals they had in honor of Dionysus. They would all get together and they would form these things called choruses. In the beginning, they didn't really have individual actors. They had choral theater in which a group of men who all sort of dressed alike and had masks that all looked the same, and they moved, sang, and spoke together. And that was really how they acted. That's how they told stories. They were in this group of like synchronized men. And these were competitions. In honor of Dionysus, every year they would have these great competitions for who could create the best play, who could have the best theater. And that was really how theater just began at all, was just as these choral competitions. Later on, they started adding actors, but that didn't happen for a good long while. And I remember, we'll go back to that word called thespian. The very first person to add an actor was both an actor and a playwright by the name of Thespis. So now you know where thespian comes from. Thespis was the first guy to add one specific actor as his own individual character into a play. He wrote tragedies, and he added in that first actor, so he's somewhat of a legend now. We use that word thespian based off of him. Once Thespis added that first actor, other people wanted to get in on writing these kind of plays that had actors in them. They primarily dealt with tragedies at first. A lot of the really famous playwrights of those times wrote tragedies. Some of those famous people were Aeschylus. Aeschylus introduced the second actor there, so along with the first actor of Thespis. And then, of course, we have Sophocles. Now, Sophocles added the third actor, and he also wrote some really famous plays that you've probably heard of or read. Pretty much everyone had to read Oedipus Rex in high school, maybe Antigone, so you probably heard of him. And then Euripides was another one of those really famous tragedy and playwrights that we have going on there. And then later on, someone decided to add comedy. So now you know we have the comedy and tragedy masks. Comedy actually came after tragedy. It's funny that humanity in the beginning was obsessed with more like sad stories in the beginning. But comedy was sort of created by Aristophanes. In fact, Aristophanes wrote all of the comedies that we currently have left from ancient Greece. Not even just most. He wrote all except for one. I think one was written by someone else, but Aristophanes was the big guy when it came to comedies. Now we'll talk a little bit about just what the sort of stage performance area looked like back then, because it looked pretty different than how it does now. I mean, some aspects are retained, but there were quite a few differences. In the beginning, they really just had a place for the audience to sit, and then the orchestra. Now, the word orchestra means something very, very different now, but the word orchestra back then was essentially just the big performance area, like the stage, a big round area for the actors to go on. Now, later, they added the skene, which was, like, I meant a scene house. And that was sort of the edge of the orchestra. It was sort of like our wings that we have today. It was sort of a backstage area for them to go back into when they were not acting. And then they also added in a facade stage later that was sort of just a basic backdrop for the actors to perform against. Now, when it comes to the actors themselves and what kind of costumes and design they use, only males were allowed to act in ancient Greece. A little bit of a sexist society, but you know, what are you going to do? And they would all wear masks, and these masks would have big, exaggerated features to tell you things about the character, like their gender, their ethnicity, their social role, because obviously it's not going to be very obvious when you have a bunch of, you know, middle-class guys up on stage. You need to give them big masks to tell people what kind of people they are. And then they would often wear other sort of exaggerated features for comedies and things of that nature. When it comes to special effects, they had two major things. One was called the acyclomoth. It's like a big sort of rotating platform that they could use to reveal stuff that was happening off stage. And then, of course, they have something called a mechane. Now, if you've ever heard the term deus ex machina, which it means like the machine of the gods, when something is just sort of resolved at the end for no reason. It just sort of all magically happens. That comes from this, the mechane. It's a thing in which they could fly people in on a crane. So they'd often like fly a god in at the end that would just save the day, and that's where the term deus ex machina comes in. Now all these techniques remained pretty much the same until the end of the 5th century BCE, when Alexander the Great sort of came in and messed everything up. He united Greece, and with that, plays started sort of spreading out from just Athens. Before they were primarily focused in Athens, but it started being spread throughout the Greek land. which sounds great. They did end up getting played at other times other than just the Dionysian Festival, so they get played at other sort of fun military events and things like that. And the actors became sort of more professional. It became more of a job than just a competition that they would have every year. So, there's a lot of things changed, maybe for better or for worse, but Alexander the Great certainly had a big impact on not only the politics, but also the theater of the time. Luckily, to sum up this whole section about Greek theater, we have Aristotle to help us out. He actually wrote an entire piece on the theory of drama, which he called the Poetics. Now, he sort of defined the boundaries of dramatic theory, saying that it had the following major points about tragedy, particularly. He said that it imitates, it takes, and it produces. Now, within this, he also defined and discussed the 6 parts of a play. Now, we have to remember this is all during Greek theater, but these are still often used today to talk about the parts of a play. And the major 4 out of the 6, we have plot, character, language, and spectacle. So all these things are very important in Greek theater. Hope you had a good time. I hope you learned a lot. So, alright everyone, have a great day.